Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at the Messy Disciples. Welcome one, welcome all. We are really excited to have you here today to join us for what I recently found out happens to be Pastor Bob's piece de resistance, his specialty. If he were a surgeon, this would be his focus. He is a surgeon. He's a surgeon of the word. Um, I'm really, really excited today, Pastor Bob, to have this conversation with you. It is something that I have been noticing for many, many years as I've grown up, as I've matured, as I've become an adult. I have seen repeated examples of this, and it seems to be something that is much more prevalent now than it was in the past. It reeks of all sorts of things: the coming of the end, the rapture, I don't even know the right words to describe it, but the idea for doing today's topic, everybody, was it came to a head for me just a couple of weeks ago. We're sitting here, we're recording this right now on February 24th, 2021, and the Super Bowl had just occurred a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. And if it's okay with you, Pastor Bob, I'd like to start out by sharing my screen for a couple of short videos to example the kinds of things that really invoked this in me, saying, hey, Pastor Bob, I think we need to talk about this.
Yeah, go for it.
I actually came up with two examples. And these are things that, I have seen, and they're more prevalent now. And it seems that people are, I don't know if the word more accepting or even, maybe more welcoming of this kind of attitude and posture towards ourselves as humans, towards ourselves as people on this earth, and in my opinion, most importantly, towards ourselves, those of us that are Christians. I feel like we are being assaulted in the media, and I believe that our pop culture is converting more and more to a Satanist, evil posture. And those of you who have been watching our videos know that Pastor Bob and I talk a lot, especially more recently, some of our recent videos in 2021 talked about evil spirits and demons. And then, we're sitting watching, the Super Bowl, and this comes on. And so I'm going to try to share my screen here with everybody. And bear with me here while I get this going. Let me know if you can see what we're doing. Can you see my screen there, Pastor Bob? Okay. So here we go. We are watching this. This is Amazon's big game commercial. This is, I'm just going to play it. If those of you haven't seen it, or if you did see it, I'm just going to play it here. Can you hear the audio okay, Pastor Bob? Can you hear me okay on this? Is anybody, let me make sure you're sharing sound from the computer. Okay, here we go. Let me see if I can.
It's just flawless, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, I literally couldn't imagine a more beautiful vessel for Alexa to be inside. Alexa? How many tablespoons are in a cup?
There are 16 tablespoons in a cup.
Babe, food just got here. Why are you cooking? Who's that?
Alexa, turn on the sprinklers.
Honey, I already ran the sprinklers. Things are getting way too wet around here.
Alexa, dim the lights.
But I'll save you one scene.
Alexa, lights up! Alexa, lights up!
Add bath oils to my shopping list.
Alexa, no, don't do that.
Read my audiobook.
I was in his hands. I was being changed.
Yeah.
I realized that I was also kissing him.
Honey, other people have to use the bathroom around here too.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yep. Okay. So that to me was incredibly pronounced. Here I am sitting in my living room with my wife, with my in-laws, with my parents, with my children, and watching a commercial by the world's biggest company essentially making infidelity okay, and making this idea of, which I believe, and I'm not the theologian here, but I believe that goes kind of right against what the Bible teaches us to do. And
the sixth commandment.
Yeah, I mean, sexual innuendo in pop culture is not something new, with the reference that things are getting way too wet in here. But in that context, I think it's even more prolific in the regard that it really not only is in bad taste, no pun intended, but that it glorifies, here's, and actually I'm going to add another layer here before I play the next quick video. And then I'm going to let you jump in, because I know you're chomping at the bit here. But, in this 2020, 2021 time that we're in right here, where there's so much pop culture that is aimed at trying to rebuild the relationships between Black and white cultures, for them to have chosen this topic and then portrayed it in almost entirely Black characters. I think there was only one white woman in the portrayal of it there. I mean, it seems to just continue to damage all of the progress and all the things that people are saying that we want to be doing. We want this, different environment, but then you have the world's biggest company showing that infidelity is okay, and having these kinds of, fantasies and this idea that, to hell with your husband, whatever he's saying doesn't matter. I'm going to do this with this guy sitting in a bathtub. I go on and on. I don't need to recant the entire thing. I'm going to play one more video, and this also is something, Pastor Bob, I'm not sure if you've seen. If you have, then I definitely would like to hear your take on it. If you haven't, I still want to hear your take on it. But this is a less than 1 minute video. Those of you who also watched the Super Bowl also know that an artist by the name of The Weeknd was the one doing the halftime show. And this is a clip from a concert that The Weeknd put on prior to the Super Bowl. And I'm just going to play it, and you can kind of see for yourself. This is what is being portrayed, and people are accepting of it. And apparently they're asking for more of it, as he ended up getting hired for the world's biggest stage, the Super Bowl halftime show. So I'm gonna play this, and you see what you think. It's just less than a minute long here. Ready for it? Take it away, Pastor Bob.
So on the first video, I find three things the most disturbing. The first is something that you pointed out: infidelity, the breaking of the sixth commandment, adultery is obviously the theme. What bothers me about that is that if you were to flip the genders of the characters, you would have something that would have been seen as acceptable in like previous American culture. Like, it's okay if guys, objectify women, but it's also something that was never okay with God. It was never okay to objectify people. And so here you have a woman objectifying a man, and we all have to be okay with that, either because marriage doesn't matter, or this is the comeuppance that guys get for having so dominantly objectified women for so long. And I'm just sitting back going, it's not okay at all. And so her lack of fidelity says something also probably how she behaves spiritually. And if guys were to do the same thing, it would speak the same volume. Here you have the biggest company in the world saying, we're gonna be okay with this, and we're gonna give you a product that helps you to break the sixth commandment and the first commandment. And then the third thing that really bothers me with the way that culture is going right now currently is how the husband is portrayed. I call it the Ray Romano effect. The husband is portrayed basically as an idiot. And so here you have a strong, powerful businesswoman who's making influential decisions, and she's got the answers, and the husband is basically a village idiot, and he's used as a humor device because he's obviously so out of touch and so irrelevant. And I think that plays into the lack of fatherhood that exists in culture. I firmly believe that a lot of the problems that we have in culture today stems from a lack of fatherhood. And I think that people are reacting against that lack of fatherhood with something I call the fury of the fatherless. They are acting out and they are norming a bad thing. And some people might say, well, fathers deserve that. But that's still not an excuse. That never makes it okay. And so those are the three things that I see wrong with that first video. It actually, when I first saw that video, it took me a second to get what was going on because I couldn't believe that would actually be the case. That they would say, oh, well, adultery is cool. So she's allowed to behave this way. And matter of fact, good on her for doing it. And we as a company, we're going to say, if you want to behave that way, we've got a product for you. But once I realized they were doing that, I had to check myself and say, well, I mean, I remember beer commercials back in the 80s, which objectified women. And finally, we were able to turn that tide. You couldn't sell a certain product without objectifying a certain gender. And so I had to check myself against kind of my outrage and then say, well, the Bible stance is still that no people should be objectified and no adultery should be taking place. And then I realized that, adultery is no different than idolatry in the Bible. And so it's a first commandment issue. But the thing that I take serious offense at is the Ray Romano effect, how men are treated like idiots these days. I mean, I can't take my daughters to the doctor without them asking where my wife is because they're pretty sure that I'm out of touch and I don't have the answers. The way that men are treated in society today now is basically like a village idiot. And I think it's harmful and I think it's bad. And even if you can come up with a reason why people deserve it, I still don't think that it's good to do. Does that make any sense? Gio, do you want to tackle any of that?
Yeah, you're strumming my pain with your fingers. I really agree with what you said there. In fact, for anybody who's gotten this far in the video, I want you to know that Pastor Bob and I have a special episode that's coming up here in a few weeks where we're going to speak. We're going to have our first guest on the show who's going to speak particularly to this topic of the role of the father and not only what does the Bible say about it, but its impact on our current lives and our society. And I 100% agree. You make some incredible points there about the objectification of the sexes and how it's flipped. I actually didn't consider the flip part of it because, yeah, you're right. It used to be one way. Now it's this way. It bastardizes the whole concept of a strong woman as well, because you're taking it to this extreme where you're saying, well, you can be an empowered woman in this world. Oh, and you can also do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And doesn't matter, forget your religion, forget your faith. And I think that it's incredibly damaging. It's very disappointing for me to, I understand your draw to in your comment by saying, we have this product that'll help you do that. I I don't know that I view the product the same way, but the fact that they decided to portray it in that way, I think really is a huge awakening, and it should be a huge awakening for everybody that saw this commercial and did not understand what was going on, or chose not to see it because you wanted to feel that it was funny. But for every man, woman, and child who saw that father, that black father on top of it, who, you know, already is working uphill in our society against the concept of what you said, the fury of the fatherless, and the lack of fatherhood, which I also agree is prevalent in all race. I think men of all races are not living up to their duty as a father. And I think this just perpetuates it, and it really sickens me. And it got me thinking, Pastor Bob, about Satan and about it's the whole concept of Satan and going against the commandments and going against Jesus and going against our religion as Christians is so prevalent now. I mean, when was the last time you saw anything in pop culture that didn't put down a priest or a pastor or a religious figure, or in this particular case, a father, which is the Ray Romano effect, is a fantastic hashtag for me here, because it does completely embody the anger that I have for this part of it. You know, I do not fit that, and a lot of the men that I know also do not fit that, yourself included, do not fit that paradigm, but yet that paradigm is what is being pushed. And for those who are maybe not as connected, those who are not as emotionally or religiously mature, and are only looking at it topically, they don't understand the damage that it's doing to them mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and then how that gets translated into the family unit. And in this case of an example of what you said, strong professional woman sitting there and completely ruining that stereotype, that what could be glorified as a strong image could have taken the higher road to be able to, put something of power into that position. Instead decides to say, here's what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And those of you, the tens of millions of people around the world that are watching this, you're going to eat this sandwich. Here it is.
Well, and I think that when it comes to the fatherhood part, here's this dad in this commercial who's a good dad and a good husband, and he's trying to do a good thing. But I think how this relates to the second video, which is I know what you want to get into, is here's a bad thing that's okay. Here's a bad thing that's okay. And I'm not saying anything about, the actors in it, but what they're portraying is, and what they're asking us to believe and find humorous and accept is, there's a certain level of bad that's okay. And if we just understood it a little bit better, it would still be okay. Because, let's face it, wink, wink, it's not bad because it's just Alexa. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're right on with that. It's that, you hit it right on the head, Pastor Bob. It's here's a bad thing that's okay. And that, I think, is the main problem, is that there's a whole bunch of people in all different sectors and all different topics that are all saying right now, it's okay to be bad. It's okay to do these things that the Bible specifically tells us we shouldn't be doing. And it feeds into that whole idea, that something can be done, it should be. And if it should be done or it can be done, then it's okay to be done. And we should be okay with it because we're all individuals and we all have the right, and we shouldn't have anybody tell us no and this and the other. But all of that goes against the Bible, does it not?
It does. It explicitly. I want to talk about the Satan thing if we can transition into that.
Definitely. Because
I think that this is something that we can trace in history and literature and art and movies. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. All right. So Satan and the idea of the devil was never okay in the Bible's worldview, in the Bible's world, in the history of the world. It never became okay to talk about it in a certain way until people started to take one poet wrong in the West named John Milton. John Milton in the 1600s, he lived like right in the middle of the 1600s. A very famous poet who wrote Paradise Lost and Paradise Found. You might be familiar with those. Before John Milton's Paradise Lost and Paradise Found, whenever you said Satan, people were scared. They were frightened. Even if there were Luciferians, it was something that was hunted down, expelled from society, shut down, always was the opposite of good. It was never in people's minds that the devil was your best friend or just a misunderstood person. John Milton, by the way, didn't believe that the devil was an okay person. But when he wrote Paradise Lost, he did such an amazing job of casting Satan as a rebel character that without his intention, he actually turns Satan into a hero. Now, for him, he was okay with people seeing him as a hero of evil, but he never thought that Satan was good. So there's this very famous line in his Paradise Lost where Satan, and Satan is the first character you meet in his epic work, Paradise Lost, where Satan, after having fallen from heaven, he shakes his fist at heaven and he says, "I'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven," is this very well-known line from that work. And people were so moved by his portrayal of Satan that they were like, wow, that was really, really well done. And Satan is kind of like, he's kind of epic. So the problem is that he did it so well that people actually admired him. And they admired the Satan that he made. And this became important in the 1700s because Milton, would cast God as the king and Satan as the rebel. And so in the 1700s, when the whole world was on fire with revolutions, the government, the king, and the people, the rebels, could really resonate with Milton's description of Satan and Satan's words. And so they were like, Satan's just a really misunderstood person. And what he shouts at God makes a lot of sense because I feel that way too. And so you have people like Caleb Williams or William Godwin wrote something called Caleb Williams. And in Caleb Williams, which was the most popular novel in England in its day, but it was removed from publication because it just touched people off in a revolutionary kind of way. In Caleb Williams, he makes Satan like a rebel with a heart of gold, like a really misunderstood fella. Like, yeah, he did bad stuff, but, if we all kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt, we would understand why he did what he did. Wink, wink. And so you go from Milton and people taking Milton wrong to Caleb Williams, and then you go to a guy, like Lord Byron. And there's actually a whole, you guys can Google this if you want. There's this whole thing in literature and art called the Byronic hero, spelled Byronic, Byronic hero. And it comes from this guy whose name is Lord Byron. He was an author. He was very well known. He was like the Shel Silverstein of the day. Like everybody knew who Lord Byron was. And Byron, from Milton and from William Godwin, starts to craft like a type of hero in literature who's a big, strong, powerful guy who did some legitimately bad stuff, but he wants to do better. And basically, if you spend more time just trying to empathize with him and sympathize with him, that you would get that he's not really a bad guy. He's redeemable. He's the boyfriend that you bring home and, you tell mom and dad you love him, but he's a fixer-upper, and dad thinks of him as a bad dude and mom thinks he's the devil himself. And that's the Byronic hero. The Byronic hero became so big in the consciousness of literature and art that, like, Lord Byron's friend Pierce Shelley and his wife Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. Notice how in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, she's trying to get you to sympathize with the monster, right? It's the scientists and the powerful people who are bad, but the monster's just basically misunderstood. You go from Frankenstein and all that kind of stuff, and then you go into modern day. I mean, there's a reason why we all love Brad Pitt in Troy. You know, Brad Pitt is a bad dude, right? He's a murderer. He's an invader, but he's seriously, tragically misunderstood. There's a reason why we love Russell Crowe and Gladiator, you know, because he's the Byronic hero. There's a reason why we love Tom Cruise and Last Samurai, because he's a misunderstood guy. There's a reason why we loved John Wayne, because, you know, he's got a shady past, but he's a good guy now. And so this really has affected the way that we actually even view Satan in our culture, and how we make little short videos about how 2020, you know, meets Satan and they start dating or something like that. And we're all okay with that. We're laughing at it because we've made the devil an acceptable character. I mean, Al Pacino in The Last Advocate, you know, he's doing a great job of making a case why the devil's just seriously a misunderstood rebel. And we should all just kind of give him a pass. And so ever since Milton's Paradise Lost, we have been allowing Satan in the culture under this kind of Byronic hero idea. And we think that he's not as bad as all that. And so when the game puts Satan into his stage performance, it doesn't faze them. Because what is he saying? He's saying, I'm a bad man, but I'm really okay too. I'm the dangerous boy you can bring home to mom and dad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing you say that this is not a new thing, and that it's, you know, pop culture, at least as far back as literature was, you know, the main entertainment style has been doing this. But it says to me, what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking while I'm listening to you talk about this is that, I mean, it speaks a lot to my thought of where we really are here on this earth, and the fact that so many people choose to or desire to identify with that Byronic hero character is really disturbing.
Yeah. Well, they have a whole Netflix series called Lucifer.
Yeah.
I think it's like a couple of seasons in. I don't know. I don't watch it. But what they're asking you to do is they're asking you to accept this character and what they do and their motivations. It's like Dexter. You know, here is a psychopathic person, and we're all supposed to be like, it's okay. Or the way that they asked us to buy the Hannibal or the Silence of the Lambs narrative, where what this monster was doing was okay because he had moral reasons for doing it, but they weren't moral reasons. I mean, we've just been slowly chewing on this idea of there's a certain amount of bad that's okay.
Yeah, and I think it's playing out here. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and you can put me in my place if it's wrong. I mean, I've already you know, blasphemed once in this video, but
what, you have?
I mean, it just sounds like we are in hell, and here we are where it is okay to fill in the blank. It's okay to choose my own gender. It's okay to objectify men and women. It's okay to kill and murder and steal, and it's okay for infidelity, because all of which, you know, gets parenthesized by, because, you know, it's okay to be ourselves, or it's, you know, we should embrace who we are, and we should, you know, there's no emphasis or no focus on at all on becoming better people. It's almost like, and I know you and I have had a tete-a-tete on this several times, but it's almost like we're put here for this exact reason, to prove to God that we can do the things that he is telling us we should do. Not ever saying that this other stuff doesn't exist. In fact, not only does it exist, but it exists in spades. It's everywhere. And now in this world where we have this internet, where things that are, typically maybe kept behind closed doors or maybe not as out there in the public, is, now being more accepted, widely accepted, and not just accepted. Acceptance was maybe 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, or maybe 2 generations before us that got us here. Now it's prevalent. Now it's mainstream. Now, if you are a good, God-fearing person, you are now the persecuted one. Even though we've seen persecution for this throughout history, now it's mainstream. Now it is actual pop culture. And if you are not out there, I digress for just a moment to add one more extremely scary and disturbing example, which is what is available on social media and how women and men objectify themselves now. They don't need anybody else to objectify them anymore. They choose to do it themselves with sites like OnlyFans, where your schoolmate could have their own quote unquote porn site for themselves. It's there. Yeah, well, welcome to 2021. It's absolutely a thing. And so many, internet models and all these people and these kids, they're kids that, are trying to make money, and they're doing it okay because, it's okay to do it. It's okay to be who you are. That's the cachet and the motto of or battle cry of this world and generation that we live in. And it is blasphemous. It is absolutely 100% against everything that we're supposed to be doing. And I feel like our group of Christians is just shrinking slowly and slowly and slowly, actually faster and faster and faster, where I don't even know. I'm babbling here. I'm sorry.
You're not babbling. You're talking about the problem when one day you wake up and you realize that you're living around a problem, and you're kind of pointing at it and you're going, can anybody else see this problem that's going on here? And I'm standing there with you going, yeah. And the problem started, I think, at this point in history. And then we just became okay with it. It's like, how far are you going to let the crack go in your drywall and stucco before you start to say, I could have a structural problem here? How long are you going to let the ceiling lag before you commit and either tear down your house and start again or repair it? And I think that the thing that's been allowed into our culture is this, pardon my expression for quoting a music lyric, is this sympathy for the devil. And the sympathy for the devil has shown itself in a myriad of ways, but I think at its root and its core is this idea that there's this acceptable amount of bad in the world. And all you need to do is just try and understand its perspective. And if you do that, then you'll see that there's no big problem with it either. I'm going,
which makes it all right then for you to do it.
That's right. And I'm sitting back going, no. Even if I understand the perspective, I'm still against it because it's sin and it's wrong and it's bad. And where does it start? It starts in the home. And it starts with mothers and fathers and children. And it starts with the family unit. And if families could start to say, we will not have sympathy for the devil, we will not sympathize with the world's view on things, we will not say that that's acceptable. Now, I need to be clear. I'm not saying now you all need to go out and destroy your Alexas. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, if you see a commercial like this, just realize the open sewer that it comes from. And when you're watching a movie and it's a Byronic hero, and ask yourself some basic questions. Did what they did in the movie, was that okay? Are they asking me to accept that? Did the person repent of it? Did they actually repent of it in the movie? Like, sometimes they don't even ask us to repent. They just asked us to be like, well, it's okay. They murdered about 87 people, but that's all right because I like them. I think their jokes are funny. So are they repenting? And I mean, just evaluate things through the lens of Scripture. Now I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but
Well,
it's a big topic.
I mean, it is a huge topic, and I was actually, at some point going to ask you, what could we do, what could we do about it, if anything? And at least you gave a couple of starting points, but I'm going to throw this out there because I know people listening to this, and every time I talk about this with anybody, the question that is on the tip of everybody's tongue here is Pastor Bob, is this the end of days? Is this where we are biblically that describes, I mean, better than I do, of course, the word and what the Bible speaks of the end of days and the beginning of the end. And I mean, from all I've read, it sounds like we are coming there, and it's happening more now, snowballing, because of the ease of communication that we have and the modes of communication that we have to make this so much more widely accepted in the past. And it seems to be snowballing. Are we there?
Well, I think it's certainly been the end ever since Jesus ascended. But I will say this with clarity, because I can't predict the end, because, I mean, Jesus told us not to. He commanded us not to. He just told us to be ready. He didn't command us to parcel it out. And so I'm going to be ready. But here's what I can say definitively. I think that the world used to take time for things to happen in the world. The world used to be round. All right. And what I mean by that is it took a while for ideas and people and concepts to travel the globe. But now the world is flat. And what I mean by the world is flat is we are super connected. It takes negative seconds or negative minutes for ideas to travel all across the world. And so I think we're in an age where we're more keenly aware of things. And what I want to say about that and how it relates to the end is that bids me to be even more ready for Christ's coming. Because if I can live in a super connected world, then I need to be even more diligent about being ready for his coming. And the way that I do that is I love and serve my neighbor. The way that I do that is I don't accept the lies of the devil. And I combat evil with good. There's this great verse in Romans where it says, don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And so what's my response to a Byronic hero is I point at that and I say, that was a neat story. You did a neat job, but that's not the Messiah. That's not my Savior. John Wayne is not my Jesus. A Russell Crowe is not my Jesus. And thank God for that. And I don't have to be okay with monsters. I just don't. I'm not morally obligated to say, and monsters are okay with me. And also at the same time, when people are shaming men and shaming fathers, I can stand up and I can say, this is not acceptable. This is not me. I am a father. And am I perfect? No, but I know a perfect father. And I love and respect my wife, and I don't objectify her. And I appreciate you not objectifying men, because our job's hard enough as fathers and mothers and children. Our job is hard enough. I don't need more difficulty from you. And then when it comes to being in the world, just be kind. A Geo, I think it comes right back to that. Be kind. So don't go home and smash your Alexa, but maybe spend some time being kind to one another.
That's my motto. I think that the world needs more kind, and I think that's straight out of Jesus's mouth. Be kind to each other. On this same note, I would like to ask a final question here. For those of us that have children, and here are the children who are growing up in this world, and they don't know the difference. They may have friends whose parents are not keen to what's going on, and therefore they may be influenced by these influences, and they may be shaping their personalities to feel that these Byronic heroes, as you put it, are the Jesus, are the way of Jesus, when in fact it couldn't be further from the truth. And how do we guide our children? How do we explain these things? I mean, I do my best to give an explanation. I oftentimes find that my explanations are convoluted and complicated because it's a complicated topic. And I have a lot of emotional connections to my feelings on these topics, which only makes it more difficult for me to simplify it and try to explain it to children who are seeing this being portrayed as how things are. What can we do as parents? And maybe this will also be a great question to ask our guest on our next video too. You know, I believe it does start in the family, like you said. I believe that our role as fathers is incredibly important, and it's being massively undermined in our society and in our culture. But beyond those, you know, complaints, proactively, what can we do for our kids to explain them? Do you have anything to give us here?
Absolutely. I would say make the 10 Commandments the rule of your house. And so, for instance, if my kids are miserably obsessed with their iPads and they're starting to turn into little monsters, I say, I think we have a first commandment problem. You know, the most important thing in the world to you is your iPad. I think that's becoming an idol, and we got to stop. And that'll shape them up and ship them out right away because they don't want to lose it, right? It's actually a very beautiful thing that my kids actually were at a Super Bowl thing and they saw that commercial, and their response was, "Oh, that's not good. That's breaking the sixth commandment." So my kids were able to get it, right? So the 10 Commandments are really simple. A lot of families have really complicated rules. I don't think you need complicated rules. But at the same time, teaching them 10 Commandments is good, but you need to have gospel. So you need to take time to intentionally teach your children the teachings of Jesus. Like, you need to like spend time. It's not somebody else's job to teach your kids. It's your job. It's your job. So teach them the teachings of Jesus. And then at the same time, some parents are like, well, I know what to do. I will completely shelter them and not let them see anything. Well, it's only a matter of time, right? It's only a matter of time. The best thing that we can do is pray for our children, protect our children from evil by teaching them the truth, and to teach them how to live as a Christian in the world. But what I do with my kids is I tell them the truth. I tell them the truth about stuff. And it doesn't mean I'm savage about it or rude about it. And I don't wrap any hate language around it or anything like that. I'm not trying to teach them prejudice. But if they ask a big question, I give a plain answer. And then I ask them what they think about that. And I process it through with them. I do a lot more listening when we're processing than speaking. I try to bring a Bible situation into it so that they have something that they can whet it against, you know, like sharpening a stone is what I mean. And so these are the very practical tools that I would give. Establish the 10 Commandments as a known, repeatable thing in your home, and teach the teachings of Jesus, and be honest with your kids. Don't lie to them to protect them, you know, because they'll find out. And if you think you're protecting them, but you're really covering over the truth, then what they're going to learn ultimately is that you're the liar. And then everything that you said was attached to the fact that you're a liar, and that's bad. So my middle schooler, she came home and said, my friend asked me to refer to them by different pronouns because she's becoming a boy. And she says, Daddy, what am I supposed to do about that? I says, well, how do you feel about it? And she shared her feelings and how uncomfortable she was. And I said, well, how did God make her? She said, it made her a girl. I said, so you're not under any obligation to change how you see her. But at the same time, don't be rude. Don't be a jerk to her. You know, don't go out of your way to make her feel bad about herself. You know, love her. and be kind to her, but you're not forced to change how you see God made her because of that. And so it's a very powerful conversation because she felt very pressured to do something that she couldn't understand and didn't believe. And says, you don't have to change your beliefs. You don't have to change who you are. You don't have to change how you understand things. But at the same time, don't be a jerk. The DBOJ rule, right? Don't be a jerk. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is sparking some ideas for future conversations too, because I think a lot of these topics are things that are important. I think a lot of people, especially our children and the younger generations, the teenagers and the preteens that are, really going through this, very, very, different time. I think maybe that, some of the stuff that we can offer them might be comforting and allow them to have some answers. So, well, I think we've done a really good job so far of jumping into this topic. And I'm sure after listening to this, you in the audience may have some thoughts, some comments, some questions, and we wholeheartedly encourage you to please leave those comments and questions below in the video. Pastor Bob and I will definitely get back with you. The whole point and intention of us doing this channel was exactly that, to spark conversation, to get some deeper thought on topics that are relevant to us in our lives and how we can implement these different challenges that we're faced with on earth as Christians. And I think that today's topic is one that deserves some more thought. I really appreciate your viewpoints and your direction on some of this, Pastor Bob. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience before we draw to close?
I just think it's really important to realize that the culture is constantly inundating us with things, and they're asking us to accept a bad thing and to call it good. And we don't have to. We don't have to. We can take a stand. And I really want to encourage you to think of your home as the place where it all begins, and to not look to somebody else outside of you as being responsible for taking care of your family. Think of it like you yourself. It's God's vocation for you to look after your family, to teach them wise and just things, and to teach them how to be merciful and loving and gracious in the world, but to never compromise the truth. And don't accept the world's narrative. I really feel bad for John Milton, because the poor guy wrote a great thing and people took it the exact opposite way. But ever since then, the world's been spinning this yarn that they're asking us to accept. And I just don't think that's good.
Oh, there's a lot of evil out there, everybody. And it seems to be becoming more mainstream to divert from the Bible and divert from the things that God has very clearly shown us and told us that we should not be engaging in. It's a battle every day. It's a battle getting those demons and those evil spirits away from us. I definitely encourage you all to watch some of our previous videos from this year and from last year. I also encourage all of the men out there or the women who have men in their lives that matter to them. Encourage them not only to watch this video, but also encourage them to watch our upcoming video in a couple of weeks that's going to focus a little bit more on the role of men and really what we were put here to do, which I believe is going to heavily tie into some of the things that we've said here today, and perhaps give some more options as to what we can be doing. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Pastor Bob, again for your time being here with us today, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks for watching today. It's been a great conversation. We'd love for you to be a part of the conversation, so go ahead and click subscribe. And if you hit the notification bar, it'll let you know when new videos are coming out, which is really important because all of our videos are about new and current events that are happening. If you have any questions, go ahead and contact me via email. It's great to have you a part of the conversation. Thanks for joining us. Bye.